Healing potions are likely the single most used consumable item in D&D 5e. Players can be found guzzling these things freely in almost any session. This makes sense given D&D's combat-centric nature. With the rapid consumption of healing potions in any party, it's natural for players to ask the question, can I make my own healing potions? Let's take a look at the official rules for crafting healing potions, break down some strengths and weaknesses of the system, and offer an alternative method for creating healing potions that isn't so cumbersome. Healing potions are magical items according to the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. As such, we will be using standard crafting rules for magical items from the DMG, noting that the item is consumable, and then also look at modifications from Xanathar's. Because Dungeons & Dragons gets additional books, updates, and content tweaks from time to time, healing potions have different crafting requirements based on the scope of books you're using. Before we get into the specifics, let's look at what a potion of healing actually is. You regain 2d4 plus 2 hit points when you drink this potion. Whatever its potency, the potion's red liquid glimmers when agitated. This description for healing potions from the 5e SRD does not give you too much information. It's canonically red, and in its weakest form heals 2d4 plus 2 hit points. There are also stronger versions of the potion labeled as Greater, Superior, and Supreme Potions of Healing. These grant 4d4 plus 4, 8d4 plus 8, and 10d4 plus 20 HP respectively. Now that we know what healing potions are and what their strengths are, let's look at what it takes to craft a basic potion of healing. If you want to craft a potion of healing in 5e using the rules in the DMG, you must have the following. Access to the healing spell Cure Wounds. The knowledge of how to create a potion, like a formula or schematic. 50 gold pieces worth of materials. 2 days worth of uninterrupted crafting time. Be at least level 3. If you have all these things, congratulations! You can create a potion of healing. As magical item creation rules state, a magic item's crafting time and cost are dependent on its rarity. Since we know a potion of healing is a common item, it would cost 100 gold pieces and take 4 days to craft. But the DMG specifies on page 135 that consumable items should typically be half the cost of permanent magic items. With this discount, the cost drops to 50 gold pieces and the days to craft reduced to 2. There are no details or rules on the process for crafting a potion of healing. What goes on behind the scenes is a completely open narrative choice for the players and the DM. If you want to craft the Greater, Superior, or Supreme versions of these potions, the rarity increases for each to Uncommon, Rare, and Very Rare respectively. Each in turn would take 10, 100, and 1,000 days to craft, and they would cost 250, 2,500, and 25,000 gold pieces each. With these kinds of numbers, making anything other than a simple potion of healing becomes extremely unlikely. Even if your players are wealthy, I doubt many games can accommodate a 100-day time skip for one potion. In Xanathar's Guide to Everything, potions of healing get even murkier. Xanathar, the esteemed beholder that he is, believes that healing potions are so common and crafted so often that they should actually be even easier to obtain. The updated cost, times, and player level minimums for crafting the potions are as follows. Potion of Healing, 25 gold pieces, 1 day to craft, player level minimum 3rd, heals 2d4 plus 2 hit points. Greater Potion of Healing, 100 gold pieces, 1 week to craft, player level minimum 3rd, heals 4d4 plus 4 hit points. Superior Potion of Healing, 1,000 gold pieces, 3 weeks to craft, player level minimum 6, heals 8d4 plus 8 hit points. Supreme Potion of Healing, 10,000 gold pieces, 4 weeks to craft, player level minimum 11th, heals 10d4 plus 20 hit points. These modifications are very kind from a time sense. The Supreme Potion of Healing, under standard DMG rules using the half-cost considerations, would take 1,000 days to craft. That's just under 3 years. With Xanathar's rule set, we can expect a Supreme Healing Potion in a month, which makes an amazing item somewhat obtainable for long-term campaigns with decent-sized time skips. Even still, the current rules for potion crafting are largely inefficient, since players rarely have a lot of downtime in their adventure when potions would be most useful. While downtime varies from game to game, we've rarely had a month-long time skip in our average campaigns. And even when we do, players don't tend to have the foresight to spend that time crafting a very limited number of consumables. Most other downtime options they tend to have are focused on preparing themselves for their next adventure. But healing potions are very useful items. They're common, and players come across them fairly frequently in most games. They're even slightly better than Cure Wounds, which heals 1d8 plus the spellcasting modifier, since the Potion of Healing heals 2d4 plus 2, which at low levels tends to have a higher minimum in average. With all these positives for healing potions, they're still laughably unattainable for standard players. This is due to time gating. Crafting items in D&D is clunky and difficult because it takes such a ridiculously long time to make anything. Sure, it makes sense that a legendary item is likely someone's life work, but it feels really bad to have consumables that you can easily find in a shop be unobtainable in the average game, since there typically isn't enough break in the story to stop and prepare them. Crafting as a slow and laborious system is a design choice, but it's one that centers on pushing it out of the game. It might have been even better for crafting to be completely unrestricted, rather than to have such rigid rules that are incompatible with everyday gameplay. In most cases, fun crafting systems need to be useful, attached to other normal game mechanics, and provide players with decisions on how to most effectively use their crafting time. The system in D&D 5e currently takes the final decision on how to spend time to the extreme by saying you can go on adventures and encounter many rare and wondrous items, or you can spend 2,000 days crafting a single very rare item. Sure, there's some sense to the timescale, but it deliberately halts crafting for most games. If you want to make healing potions more craftable for your game, you simply need to change the part of the crafting process that keeps players from utilizing it. In our case, this is the time commitment. The following homebrew rules work for potion crafting by switching the limiting factor from time to material components. Potions of healing can be brewed by anyone so long as they meet the following requirements. The knowledge of how to brew a potion of healing, like a recipe or knowing a spell. A safe and suitable space for brewing, which can be defined by any reasonable DM. The ability to cast Cure Wounds, or a Cure Wounds spell scroll to cast when brewing the potion. An available spell slot for the spell cast in brewing the potion. An alchemist supplies or herbalist kit. A specific material component for the potion. In this case, we can just call it a heal root. A proper vessel to contain the potion. And an uninterrupted long rest. Once the player has these things, they are able to declare that they will be making a potion of healing during a long rest. This is a suitable long rest activity because a long rest is not just sleeping, it's doing non-strenuous activities for about 2 hours during that time as well. This is the time that wizards prepare spells anyway, so it makes sense that they could use the same time to prepare consumable potions of healing. The main difference between these rules and the rules provided by the DMG is that the potions can be created much more easily in a much shorter period of time. However, these homebrew rules do require specific material components. The one made up for this potion is a simple item called Heal Root. Players may come across this while adventuring. It could be found growing in the wild or bought from shops. 25 gold piece worth is enough to make one potion of healing. The important thing here is that it specifically allows the DM to control how much the players have at any given time. A heal root item is something players may seek out, but because it is a named key item, you can push your players to use survival checks in the wild to find it, or charisma checks to haggle down the price from local herbalists. In the case that they have too much and are crafting too many potions, you can simply cut back on the availability of the item in your world. With these rules, potion crafting is still time-gated, but instead of being days or weeks to create a healing potion, it's a couple of hours during a well-established routine in-game. Every group takes long rests. Once you pair the crafting of consumables to long rests, players will have more options of what to do with that rest. More choices are typically more fun, And a player who's saved because they decided to craft one extra potion will feel that their choice made a difference. If you want to go one step further and make the crafting a bit more challenging, you can ask your players to roll for success when crafting a potion of healing. A basic potion of healing could have a brew DC of 11 against a d20 roll plus the player's spellcasting ability modifier. On a failure, the potion does not brew properly and some material components are wasted. While we understand this homebrew rule set may not be extensively comprehensive, it does provide a great framework for your party to make healing potions more easily while still giving the DM plenty of control over how much healing any party has access to. Since healing potions are such a basic part of the D&D gameplay, it feels really bad to have them be so hard to acquire through player-directed means. No matter how you go about it, the rules presented here will give you plenty of options on how to let your players craft potions of healing for your game. As a DM, you have plenty of say here, so don't just settle for any crafting rule set. Choose a system that will be the most fun for your D&D game. If you're interested in more homebrew rule sets, check out masterthedungeon.com. Subscribe to the channel to get notified when we release new videos, and consider supporting us on Patreon. Happy DMing!